Hello and welcome to another segment of Good to Know Family Law Topics. In today's segment, we're going to talk about what I like to call, how do I know it's mine? Of course, what I'm talking about, preserving and keeping evidence related to your separate property claims. And before we get into the details, let's talk about what separate property is and what it's not. In California, all property that is acquired from the date of marriage to the date of separation is presumed to be community property. Conversely, separate property is property that is acquired before the date of marriage or after the date of separation, or that is acquired from gift or inheritance. And this is important because community property is going to be divided equally. Separate property is going to be the separate property of only one of the spouses. Two common separate property claims that people make during a divorce are when a person claims that they use separate property money as a deposit on the purchase of a home during the marriage, or where a person states that he or she deposited their separate funds into a joint banking account with their spouse and then commingled their separate property funds with the community funds. In those cases, the person who's claiming the separate property is asking for the money back that they either used as the down payment of the home or commingled with the community property funds. When there's a disagreement over a separate property claim, it's the person who's making the claim who has the burden of proof. In most cases, the person who has to prove the separate property claim has to trace the community funds to a separate property source. The failure to adequately trace separate property money to a separate property source can result in a huge loss of money. And that's why it's very important to preserve documents related to the separate property claim. A couple of tips on how to preserve your separate property claims. First of all, keep your documents in a secure place. I like to tell my clients that putting documents in a safety deposit box at your local bank is a pretty good idea. Also, you may want to think about commingling your separate property money with a community account. Putting the money into an account that has community funds can be catastrophic, especially as time goes by. Keep the separate property accounts separate. For a more detailed analysis on how to preserve and develop your separate property claim, read my blog.